Thank you, Martin, and welcome to the Bay Area here in Northern California, home to the controversial site of the Oakland-San Francisco Bay Bridge. Look behind me. Those pillars right there, those are pillars of Chinese steel. Today, we'll talk trade, infrastructure, America's relationship with China. We all love cradles of innovation, but we are not naive. We know that it requires investment in American infrastructure if we're going to create 30 million jobs. So let's get in out of the rain and get it on for this Friday, January 20th, 2012. Well, good afternoon to you. Nice to see you again. I am Dylan Ratigan. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This day 3 of our 30 million jobs tour that'll be rolling throughout the winter. More on that in just a few moments. But first, let's deal with the news of the day. We simply can't get enough of what happened and, more importantly, what didn't happen last night in South Carolina.
No, but I will.
More on the political follies, including President Obama doing Reverend Al Green with our mega panel a little bit later. But right now we are live, as you can see here, in California's Treasure Island, smack literally in the middle of the San Francisco Bay. And behind us, you can see the Bay Bridge. That bridge links Oakland to San Francisco, and it is getting a $7.2 billion taxpayer upgrade. It is the biggest public works project in the history of California, and it should be a great opportunity to celebrate and create thousands of U.S. jobs. But guess what? This bridge is being made in China. 3,000 Chinese workers received new jobs instead of Americans. And if that is not enough, those Chinese manufacturers are using 50,000 tons of fabricated Chinese steel instead of American steel. On this trip, as you know, we have focused so far on innovation. But to create 30 million jobs, it is the pillars of American industry that need critical investment. And there is no pillar greater than our nation's infrastructure. And what's not investment is paying China to build American bridges. We start with Thomas Hickman, Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Oregon Iron Works. It's a U.S. company that lost the bid to build the bridge we were just discussing. And joining us from his district in West Virginia, Congressman Nick Rahall, top Democrat on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. His bill, the Invest in American Jobs Act, pretty linear, would make sure all bridges and American infrastructure projects that are financed by your and my taxpayer dollars, as that bridge is here, are stamped made in America, made in China. And Congressman, how many jobs and how much work is being lost in this country through the outsourcing of the manufacturing and labor to build American infrastructure that really is being driven by the rigged trading agreements that we have that we'll discuss a little bit later with China?
Well, Dylan, first I commend you for this jobs tour upon which you've embarked. And what's happening on that bridge behind you at a time when so many American workers are desperately looking for jobs is simply appalling. It's outrageously offensive, and it's downright wrong that, as you have referenced, American taxpayer dollars are going to provide a full employment for Chinese workers. With American taxpayer dollars at a time when so many Americans are out of work. Made in China on that bridge, the largest infrastructure project in the history of California, will have made in China stamped all over it. And we have the American workers that can do it. At a time when unemployment is high, at a time when we're paying unemployment benefits to laid off American workers, we ought to be putting them back to work on projects of this nature.
The truth is, we would have been able to perform this project within the timelines set up to begin with by the state of California. Caltrans wanted this job done sooner than it is being done now. We believe we could have met those deadlines, even with the changes that occurred through the course of this job. But the sad part here is the job loss. We lost 3,000 jobs over the course of the last 5 years of U.S. workers who are not employed at this point in time. These jobs went to China, and with those jobs, we lost high-wage jobs family wage jobs, jobs that pay health and welfare benefits and 401ks and pension programs. All of that is gone. And what we need to do is not allow it to happen again.
We just said China needs us just as much as we need them. And after this, an honest conversation about the relationship we must forge with China to keep American jobs in America and at the same time acknowledge the fragile and delicate nature of making a transition like this. Well, at the beginning of the show, we told you that the bridge behind us here on Treasure Island was made of Chinese steel. In fact, we talk a lot on the show about China's impact on the U.S. and more specifically, how it's happening. The symptoms, of course, job loss, unfair trade, the catalyst for much of that. Oil prices are determined largely by China's variable demand as much as it is ours. If we talk about the currency plenty, China looms so large over our long-term plans that a recent poll showed that more than 6 in 10 Americans are viewing China's rise as a threat to U.S. economic security. But could they also be our greatest economic ally? The truth is, China is not our enemy, and its emergence doesn't necessarily spell doom to the U.S. as a world leader. In order for both nations to continue to thrive, we have to figure out a way to work with each other, not against one another. Remember our theme of ruthlessness and compassion. That is the only way to resolve something as complex as this. And I want to bring in two men that understand both the fragility and the importance of our relationships with China. From the Financial Times, former Beijing bureau chief and current Washington bureau chief Richard McGregor, and the former president of Intel China, Jim Jarrett, with us here in San Francisco. He is now working for a program supporting innovation and collaboration between the U.S. And China, and it is a pleasure to welcome both of you. You talked, Jim, about the economic interdependence of the U.S. and China, how they need us and we need them. We just went through that with the Connect the Dots. How do we push more of the conversation to resolving through our mutual interdependence as opposed to the sort of false optics of demonization?
Well, it is a very close working relationship that we have with China, and it's growing. I mean, we're their biggest export market. They're among our biggest export markets. So we both have a lot to gain and a lot to lose from this relationship. So, I look at it as playing kind of offense and defense. And the defense is making sure that China is living up to its commitments as a trading partner. And the offense is doing what we need to do and should be doing anyway to grow jobs in the United States so that we're an effective competitor.
Here, it is electric. We're at the birthplace of the modern-day electric car, asking, can American drivers ever be convinced to make the switch? So we started today's show with the story of the bridge behind us, and what drives on those bridges, of course, nothing more than our cars. And in our book, Greedy Bastards, we talk about the death and rebirth of electric cars because we think not only that they're instrumental in creating jobs in America, but represent a critical component of getting America off of foreign oil and seizing what we see as the fuel of the future, efficiency. Forget your fuel sources. Stop burning so much of whatever it is. But could we actually ever have electric stations instead of gas stations, or is that little more than a pipe dream? And joining us now, Mark Vaughn, the West Coast editor of Auto Week, and Thomas Gage, CEO of the EV Grid. Both of them are electric car owners. And Mark, is there a market here?
Well, the thing with it, yes. The simple answer is yes. I own an electric car, and I think most people, once they get in one and realize that they can commute back and forth every day in an electric car, they'll find out that it costs less. You can pay under $20,000 to buy an electric car, and to fuel it, I have found over several months of driving them, it costs about 1/7 as much to operate an electric car as it does a gas car. It seems like a win-win situation, but all you have to do is get people to realize it. So yes, there is a market for it, but people don't seem to want to take the initiative to go out and learn about it.
Yeah, nothing creates initiative more than paying the real price of not doing it, Thomas. And one thing we talk about a lot in the book is the breach of price integrity in the pricing of oil. The off-balance sheet accounting, if you will, for the cost of war, the off-balance sheet accounting, if you will, for the cost of the environmental damage, obviously the subsidies. Mm-hmm. How much does the transition to new vehicles, or how much is the transition to new vehicles prevented by the subsidization of hydrocarbon fuel?
Well, it's a very, very big factor. But even today, as Mark said, with the gas prices we have in this country, electric cars are about a break even with gasoline. If you're looking in Europe where gas costs $8 a gallon instead of $4 a gallon, it should be a no-brainer to drive an electric car.
Well, next week we're off to South Florida, painting a picture of paradise when in truth it's an economic wasteland, symptomatic of everything that ails this country, from housing to health care, and simply talking about it is no longer enough. We hope that you will join us in Florida on Wednesday and back in New York on Monday. Hardball is up right now.